Welcome to the world of Rowan astrology. I'm David Charles Rowan, and you join us on this Rowan style introduction to the Dynamics of Astrology, a course that was recorded in 2023 for you to follow and enjoy and gain a lot more insight into the nature and breadth of what is possible from astrology. Over this series, we'll explore not just the signs, planets, houses, and aspects and their meanings, but also why each thing means what it means. And why does the symbol of this look like that? And what is it about that shape that carries this particular meaning? And you'll learn how to read the language of astrology as easy as if you were reading text from a book. And this course places astrology in a broader context of history, both history of the world and Western philosophy, and the history of astrology itself, and the evolving consciousness of mankind. We take a broad sweep through associated fields such as psychology, mythology, spiritual perspectives, paganism, sacred geometry, numerology, and a little bit of neuroscience and psychobiology. The purpose of this introduction course is to provide you with a foundation upon which to build your astrological knowledge and expertise, so you're able to continue with self-study or stay here with me for the deepest exploration of astrology, astrobiography. And before we begin exploring this goldmine of astrology, please remember to like and subscribe. This channel would be nothing without your kindness and support, so please feel free to return and explore the growing content, and of course, your comments are always welcome. Thank you. We are back again. Right. Now, good. I can see you coming back. Good. Right. Just give it a minute for a couple of other people to return again, so we know we're here. Yeah. All right. Good. Right. Donna, are you back?
I'm here, yeah. I just put my screen on in a second. Is that okay?
That's okay. That's all right. Yeah, because otherwise I have no idea who's here and who isn't.
Okay.
But for continuity, it's good if the people that were present on the video before tea break was there afterwards. Right. Now, a little bit about me before we progress further. You may or may not know that I have autism. And I got diagnosed in 2002 with Asperger's syndrome. But since I found out I had dyspraxia and echopraxia and dyslexia as well. But I also have no biological family at all. I was born a twin, and my twin brother died when we were 4 days old.
Wow.
And it took me time to learn that he wasn't here, because initially we were in the same incubator. Then after 2 days, we were separated. So we used to astral project backwards and forwards to each other. So when his body stopped being here, he used to still come and see me. So we used to still play. And it wasn't until the following Christmas, when I was given a fluffy toy, that I realized that it was lifeless. And that's when I felt alone. But I've got memories of astral experiences all the way through my childhood. You know, like going to sleep when I was about 3 or 4 years old and going through the wall next door and playing with children next door, and then coming back into my bedroom as my dad was coming up the stairs and pretending I was asleep, because that's what he would expect to find, right? And so I've had this awareness of like a dualism of life, of experience, of there being the physical, tangible world, but also this other place that I easily, frequently kind of go back and forth between, right? My mum became disabled when I was 10. She had a heart attack, number 3, I think it was, and a stroke at the same time. Became paralyzed down one side. My dad used to do double shifts at work, so I was her carer. You know, so when I'd get up in the morning, I'd blanket bath her. I'd put, you know, doing that with your mum is a bit of a thing when you're 11. Getting her onto a commode, I don't know if you know what a commode is, like a portable toilet. So I used to have to hold her hands and then swing her up into the air and swing her like this, and then like precision bombing with the tiger moth, kind of get her to land on this commode without it tipping over. And then, of course, there's cleaning up after. It's your mum, and this is before school, right? And then dish out phenobarbitones and tuners and barbiturate drugs, and then get myself ready, then make a pot of tea for mum, and then go off to school. And that was my life when I was 11. And she had more heart attacks and strokes, and she died when I was 19. My dad died in 2002. And so a year after my mum died, he just went off. He abandoned me completely, went out and never came back. And we reconnected sometime later, but he never explained the reason why. So I've had a bit of an experience of loss in my life. Through my 20s.
That's a complete understatement.
Yeah. Through my 20s, different girlfriends had miscarriages, ectopic pregnancies. One girlfriend was, a child was growing quite well about 2 or 3 months in, and then it turned out there was serious health problems, and so we had to say goodbye. So in my mid 30s, I had a vasectomy because I just had enough of bereavement. You know, just like, thank you, Mr. Death, I get it. You know, I'll just like hang out until it's mine. Right? So I have this kind of relationship with life and death that to me are cyclic. You know, to me, death is a part of life. You know, and if you can be conscious of mortality, it makes everything else more wonderful. You know, because if you know that a sunny day might be the last sunny day, goodness me, you make the most of it. So I used to say to people, I would recommend that you live every day as if it's your last, but tomorrow you get the full consequences of all of your actions. So you've got to like live life as if you're having a responsible party. You know, enjoy yourself, but avoid scratching people and stop, you know, avoid being scratched yourself if you can. Now, it's impossible to live without taking life, because as soon as we breathe in thousands of microbes. You walk on the floor, you're squashing all sorts of things when you walk on the floor. I haven't eaten meat for 32 years. I haven't had any dairy since the year 2000. I spent a week listening to the Dalai Lama in 2008 and became vegan then. So I do my best to live an impact-free life, but it's impossible. I've got a hybrid car, you know, So we as humans functioning in our world today, we have to engage with, you know, there are times when we will hurt creatures in order to survive. That's just what we do. So there's nothing bad or immoral about just that. You know, we're part of the natural world. And that for me, this natural world has a spiritual dynamic to it as well. I've been conducting past life regressions since 1989. Was when I did my first one of those. I teach how to do past life regressions in a day. If you ever want to come and find out how to do that, it's a one-day thing and it's great fun. Or as one person put it, is this the come as you were party? Right? Which I thought was a funny thing to say. For me, planet Earth, if you like, is like a school for souls. It's not a school for humans, it's a school for souls. And we, at this moment in time, have incarnated into human form, which means we can have a polysemy of different environments. We can experience cold temperatures, hot temperatures. We're not restricted in that kind of sense. So in our human form, we have a brilliant intellect as well. We have consciousness, we have self-reflection, we have all sorts of things. We also have stuff that we kind of plan to do before we arrive. I'm of the opinion that before we're born, there's some kind of planning design thing that takes place where the kind of the basic principles of the next incarnation are mapped out in agreement with any life form you contact. It's very complicated. And then you come down to Earth and you find that you have exactly the right circumstances to draw out the lessons that you're going to learn this time around. That's how it seems to me. In my time of doing past life regressions, there was one lady who found that her mother this time round has been a father from 3 lives round. So to me, it's like we form soul bonds, and these soul bonds stretch like elastic over time and space, and souls converge together, and then they go along a parallel path, and then they diverge, and then they might converge again. And that time that you're on the parallel path could be just 3 milliseconds. Say, oh, sorry, in a doorway. Or that can be 40,000 lifetimes. Some souls converge, diverge. They do that in a day. They're together in the living room, and then someone's in the kitchen and someone's in the garden shed in the afternoon, and then they're back in the dining room again in the evening. Converge, diverge through the day. We do that through lifetimes. You know, you might chill out with someone in one life and you're friends. In another life, you might be twin sisters. In another life, you might be lovers. In another life, you might be teacher and student. In another life, you might be comrades in arms. The context can change, but the depth of bond seems to be something that never breaks. And it seems to survive petty disputes and little arguments, like, you know, being killed by your friend, that kind of thing. These little bruises, that can take place, because in the grand scheme of things, in a longer view, things can be healed over time. So it seems to me, I mean, I'm of the opinion that every single life form that I form a strong bond with, I've known sometimes somewhence before. And I don't mean kind of like saying to someone, oh, we met in a past life, as if it's a special thing. I think we've met in a past life is an ordinary thing. You know, I think reconnecting with souls that you've known before is as ordinary as bumping into a friend in Oxford Street on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
You know, it's nothing out there. I think it's weird if I haven't met someone before. That's the thing that surprises me. No connection at all. Really? Oh, this is new. You know, so I know there are people who kind of say, oh, we've met in past lives as if it's a big significant thing and they're a guru figure and now you must look up to them. I don't mean it like that. I mean it like, hello again. That's how I kind of think of it, because we're in a playground for souls and we're learning, right? Now, we learn all sorts of things. Now, some people might think, what about Earth's populations? How come there's so many people now? If you could transport yourself back to, say, the late Neolithic or the beginning of the Iron Age, and you looked at how people were living then, and then you came forward, say, I don't know, 200 or 300 years, you find that life hadn't changed at all. You know, things change slowly through history. You know, can you imagine being the first time that you saw someone wearing spectacles? Like you're walking down your street as you normally do, or you're in the forest as you normally are. Suddenly there's someone with kind of shiny things on their head. That's got to go, whoa, you know? On the Sunday, we did this thing of Pluto in Aquarius. And the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, someone invented a hot air balloon. Now, could you imagine that?
Yeah.
Imagine you've had your Sunday meal and you're having your afternoon constitution. So you're walking through the park with your partner, right? And there's no one around visibly. And you hear a voice shout, hello. And so you say, did you say something? They go, no, I didn't say anything. I thought I heard a voice. I thought I heard a voice. And you look around and there's no one there. And then this voice says, hello. And you, where's that coming from? Because that sounds close, but there's no one, you know, for miles. And then you hear this up here and you look up, there's someone in the sky. But whoa, the first time you see a hot air, that's got to freak you out, surely, right? Chocolate. There was a time chocolate didn't exist. Yeah, get your head around that. Someone come up with that one, right? The Elizabethans loved sugar, but they didn't have dentistry for another 150 years. That was an error. Right? You know, you on death certificates, you get these things sometimes, these parish records that float around the internet, and there were a number of years where toothache was the primary cause of death because they had sugar but no dentistry. Yeah. Ooh. So things change sometimes swiftly, sometimes slowly. It could be that because there is a rapidity of consciousness, cognition changes now, inventions and new things being invented, like an exponential kind of dynamic of change, that more souls are here because there's more difference. You know, in past life regressions, sometimes you know what century you're talking about because of something they say. Like, for example, if I said to you, oh, I'm walking by a horse, and on the other side of this track, I can see a man, and he's got a stovepipe hat on his head. When is that? Picture
1700s?
Yeah, picture a stovepipe hat. What do I mean by a stovepipe hat?
I don't know.
A hat that looks like a stovepipe. What's it called? What were they called?
No idea.
Top hats.
Oh,
So when were top hats? Do you know?
Victorian times.
Victorian times. Yeah. What about if there's a man on the ship and he's got a triangle on his head? A triangle hat on his head.
oh yeah.
Napoleon,
Sorry?
Napoleon times.
Yeah, around the 1700s. Yeah, that's it. So you could literally time the experience of a past life regression by just getting a description of the clothing. Now it changes every quarter. You know, oh, this season is this season they're wearing green, this season they're wearing that. It just changes very, very quickly, which might be one of the reasons why there's more souls on planet Earth at this time, because there's more difference to experience. As a possibility, I don't know, I'm just kind of guessing, right? I don't know, that's just how it seems to be. But it does seem that one of the things that you can tell in a person's birth chart is the kind of the template of the remit that you're here to learn this time round. Some people have described an astrological birth chart as your soul's assignment sheet for this incarnation. Isn't that a cool thing? You know,
Very beautiful.
yeah.
I like
A lady in her early 60s booked me up for a session about 5 years ago. And she said, I want you to look at this last part of my life, and I'd like a detailed list of everything my soul needs to get in place before I leave this life, so that when I go to the great chamber for my assessment, I am as light as a feather as I possibly can be. I thought that was brilliant. So we did like a 2.5 hour session of just listing out all the soul lessons. So she's got like a checklist of, right, okay, I've got to do that. So she's ready.
That's a great way of facing any
I thought
difficulties
that was
that might arise.
Yeah, I thought what wisdom she has to do that, you know. I like that. That was
Or
good.
maybe give it as a birth gift, you know?
Yeah, yes, indeed. That's why one of the readings of for people is your karmic soul path. So you can kind of get an articulated listing of those things. So now we learn a lot of things. You know, a lot of people kind of think, oh, what am I here to learn? And they think in one thing, right? One thing. How impoverished does one have to be to think there's only one thing to learn in life? And if you saw a tramp in a doorway and you gave them 50p, and then within minutes you were asked to write down everything you've just experienced, and he was asked to do the same, right? What you've just experienced: generosity, compassion, tolerance. You've experienced humility. If you listed out everything, if you took time to do that, you probably end up with a sheet of A4 paper, you know, with at least 20 things you've just learned in one 50-second interaction with a tramp in a doorway. Now, if you think of all the things you've learned in life, and the list is astonishing, you know, you are amazing, the stuff you've learned. You know, you've learned how to balance your body on a bit of rock, right? While there are objects moving around you at dangerous great speed, and you've learned how to calculate the trajectory of a moving object, and to hold onto carrier bags of shopping and talk to a friend at the same time and go across the road safely. Bloody amazing. You know, that is astonishing. The balancing, The adjustments in your arms and hands and shoulders as you do that, as you go, just astonishing. And that's just like carrying your bags across the road. If you list out the stuff you've learned, and it's, oh goodness me, it's a long list. So
I won't feel bad when I fall over now.
well, no, because you're learning balance. You see, we learn balance by falling over, and then we get the difference between balance and imbalance. Mistakes are the tools of learning. That's what they are. I often describe faults as conscious growth promoters. That's what a fault. When you recognize a fault in yourself, it's a conscious growth promoter, because it's getting you to kind of review what you're doing and go, if I make it different slightly, then next time it will be better. Aha. And then we can all grow, you see. So this process of learning everything can't be done in one lifetime. It's impossible. Hence the widespread belief in reincarnation, that we have multiple lives. Now, astrology fits into this kind of stuff if it's the assignment sheet for this life. But one of the things that seems to be an important thing about astrology is that it's calculated from when we take our first breath. And does this suggest that astrologers believe that a developing embryo isn't alive? That's not quite the case. Now, you know what my cartoon drawings are like so far, and I'm apologizing in advance for this one, but this seems to be the easiest way that I can illustrate this. Please bear with me. Right. So first of all, we need a bit of ocean, because we're going to have a nice environment, right? And on our ocean thing, we'll have a palm tree. That's nice, isn't it? And perhaps a couple of birds over the sea, just so we know it's sky. And let's have a dynamical line that represents a demarcation line between the realm of spirit above the line and the physical world below it. Okay, so we've got a multiple dimension thing here. And in our scenario, there's a soul in the realm of spirit. Now, are you aware of the Greek word for soul?
No.
No, the Greek word for soul is psyche. Yeah. So quite literally, as a translation, psychology means knowledge of the soul.
Oh.
And psychotherapy means soul therapy in literal translation. But I was reliably informed by an ex-student of Sheffield University that if you're doing a degree in clinical psychology and you write about psyche and the soul and you reference Greek mythology, you will get a line put through it and a message saying toe the line.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, but that at least was the case way back in the late 80s. So here we have a piece of spirit. For whatever reason, I don't know the plan, right? I only have observations of it. I do not know the plan. But anyway, for whatever reason, a piece of universal spirit has blobbed off into a piece of personality or a piece of psyche. And it's hovering about in the spiritual realm because an event is about to take place, right? It's going to be able to come down into the physical realm. And it's going to do this by a particular process that occurs. I'm sure you're aware of this process, but we do need to reference it visually. So I apologize for this, right? So there's a woman on the beach. And for the purposes of this, the man is invisible, right? Because we want to see within what's happening. And they are having good fun, and a sperm meets an egg. And in the moment the sperm meets an egg, it starts to spin. Right? And also, simultaneous with that moment, there is a thin cord of astral light that connects the soul to one cell, one single cell. Now, ladies, I have a question for you. Right? If you lost one cell of your fingernail, would you miss it?
No. Probably not. No.
No.
No, you might not. No. Now, have you heard it said that some women know the moment that they conceive? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some women know it in the instant. Right?
Yeah.
But on the other end of the scale, have you heard it said that some women can be like in a supermarket checkout and they start giving birth and they didn't know they were pregnant?
Yes.
Right? I don't know personally how a person can be so desensitized
Yeah.
or so
No.
dissociated from their physicality, but I guess trauma does all sorts of things, right?
Mhm.
Right. So we have a scale then from single cell awareness to 9-month pregnant, zero awareness, and everyone falling in between that scaling.
Yeah.
So if at a single cell, if something happened to that cell and it stopped developing, what would happen is that the line would be cut, right? And the soul is then not connected to that person anymore. Now, let's say, for example, that a soul has to learn what it's like to experience selfishness and criminality and drug addiction. And it's got to learn these things with the possibility of overcoming them, right? Because it used to be in gin alley and then it got drunk a lot in the 1920s, and now it's time to learn a bit of kind of temperance, right? So a child could be born into an alcoholic criminal family. How many of those do you think exist on planet Earth? There are a lot, right? There are a lot of people who are potentially criminal, and a lot of people who like drinking alcohol and take drugs. That's just common in lots of cities around the planet. And in the high-rise blocks and in the tenement houses and in the bungalows and in the chateaus, how many people make love at night in their locale? A lot. So there are a lot of people who could potentially maybe be the facilitating parents of a child who's got to learn about criminality and alcoholism in its only home background, right? So perhaps if it doesn't work with couple choice number A, they could go to couple choice number B in the flash of an instant. So it might not be specifically your parents that were needed for your soul. It might just be your type of parents that were needed for your soul, the archetypal dynamics of your parental experience, rather than who they were as individual people. Maybe. Right? Still, what we do know is that if this cell begins to take, what happens is it starts to grow. And as it starts to grow, the astral cord gets thicker, or in other words, more intense. And after a while, what starts to happen is that the sense of connection, the bond of connection grows. Now, it's said that as this bond grows, there's a change happening at both ends, both at the human end and at the soul's incoming end. What starts happening at the human end is that mum starts knitting and dad's painting a spare room. Right? What starts happening at the soul end is it starts to kind of come into the physical world, hover about and check out the situation. Now, a little tale to tell you. I was taught witchy things by a lady who was a high priestess of a coven, and they'd been going 25 years at that time when I met them. And this is about 1982, 83. And she told me this story about herself, right? When she was small, they had a television in their house, a very early television. The early televisions were huge and the screen was small. Rather than now, the screen is huge and the telly is small. Right? Interesting way it's gone round. And in those days, it was such an unusual thing to watch the television that they all watched television together. It was a big family event, especially when there's a film on. Hey, there's a film on. Some people would dress up in their going to the theatre clothing to watch a film in their living room. There would be a deference for authority. When when you get the music of the monarchy, what's it called? The national anthem would play, and some people would stand to attention in their living room when the national anthem would play. Right? It was a thing. And this must be early 50s, I'm guessing. And this girl, she was about 2 or 3, and there was going to be a film on. And so they were all ready to watch the film. And as the film began, the little girl said, "Oh, I like this film." And the mum said, "Rubbish, you've never seen this film before." So the little girl said, "Yes, I have." And she described the plot line of the film. The mum went ashen white, then freaked out, and the little girl was banned from watching the telly. Mum couldn't cope with what she was listening to because the mother knew that there was only one occasion where the mother had ever seen that film before. See, the little girl was half Cheyenne Indian because her father was a Canadian airman who was stationed here at the end of World War II, and he was a native Indian, right? And he started dating this girl's mother, and they only had 2 evenings together. Right? The second evening they were together, they went to the cinema, and they saw this film, and the little girl remembered floating about and actually floating like a hovering balloon, and went into the cinema and watched the film with them, which is why she remembered it when she recalled it. Could you imagine that? So, if this is the case, then of course what happens is, as the body gets bigger and bigger, the soul becomes more emotionally connected. And at some stage, then the soul begins to be able to kind of enter into the physicality. And it's said that when we die, people report going up a tunnel of light, or going up a tunnel towards the light. So I think birth is the opposite. We leave a realm of light and we come down a tube and we come into this place, whatever we find here, right? And that just seems to be what happens. We go down a tube into life, and we go up a tube back home again. And so now, so instead of talking about life, meaning existence, I'd prefer to use the word existence for existence, and use the word life to describe a period of time betwixt first breath and last breath. Because we exist before we begin life, and we exist after life is done. So rather than get the language mixed up and use life as a word to describe spiritual being not having a body at the moment, or ghost, if you want, right? Ghosts exist, but they're not necessarily in life because they're not breathing. So astrology, an astrological birth chart, marks the point of first breath, and it's your assignment chart until you finish this time round, and then it's an irrelevance from then on, because next time around you have a different chart. How does that seem to you?
Well, how do you work out then the existence? So do you go from the time of conception or something?
No, from the Big Bang.
Oh, right, okay.
But you're asking basically, when does existence begin?
Yeah, I know, I understand what you're saying. But I mean, as you do an individual's chart.
Well, everything in astrology is from first breath.
Okay.
You know, because before life is before everything, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's from the beginning of time. And, you know, in one sense, we've all got one birth chart, which is the Big Bang.
David?
Big Bang. Hello?
David,
Yeah?
could you do a chart based from the time of conception, the day of conception and time of conception?
It's possible if you know it, but it's an irrelevance really, because that's got nothing to do with when the person takes their first breath, because we have, sometimes there's late deliveries, sometimes there's premature births, sometimes there are induced births, sometimes, you know, so it actually has no relationship to this incarnation, this life, because when we are in the womb, we're not fully functioning. The central nervous system isn't switched on fully. We're not smelling the outside world. We're having an indirect thing, you know, mum is doing the spare room with dad, you know, but you can't, the developing embryo can't ring up Harrods and order a giraffe independently, you know. So it has an indirect or an unconscious relationship with the world. Stuff that's happening around the embryo is absorbed into the unconscious of the person. There is actually a part of the astrological birth chart that describes what you experienced in the womb when your mum was carrying you, and the psychological consequences of that period of time in your life, through your life.
Yeah,
Does it also show, David, in your chart, the type of birth that you have?
Yep, that's denoted by the ascendant. We're going to get to that at some stage when we talk about the first house. Yeah, and the consequences of that as well. This is detailed stuff. Because we've left the pop world far behind. We're heading into the Beethoven zone. I hope you find that. Right? And we're only we're not fully there yet. We're on the way.
And when you say assignment, is that spread over all the different planets and their positions, or is it some are more than others?
I mean the whole life, you know. But remember that all the planets are polysemous in their meaning. So it's like a very complex, multi-dimension, holographic assignment sheet, if you like, you know, because we'll talk about the psychology of things next time. But there are certain parts of the chart that I think of it like a window box, right? You've got a window box and there's all these seeds planted in the window box. Some of them might flourish and some of them might lie forever dormant. Some of the ones that flourish you might like, in which case nurture them. Some of the ones that flourish you might not like, and you don't want them there. There might be some things that haven't yet flourished. You think, oh, actually, I really wish that would come to fruition. You know, and so a birth chart's like that. And we experience the different parts of a birth chart at a level of consciousness. Through this life, we learn and develop those parts of ourselves. And we leave this life with a slightly adjusted level of consciousness, lifetime through lifetime through lifetime. Think of it a bit like, imagine that there's a building with multiple gymnasiums. And there's a moon gym, a Mercury gym, a Venus gym, a Mars gym, a Jupiter gym, Saturn gym, Uranus gym, Neptune gym, Pluto gym, right? And a Chiron gym and a Part of Fortune gym. So at a certain point in your life, it's time to go into the Mercury gym and you do cognition stuff, central nervous system stuff, cognition stuff, health and diet stuff. And then at a different point in your life, you're in the Jupiter gym and you're doing kind of relationships with international travel, with other people's belief systems, you know, further education, publishing stuff yourself, all this sort of thing. So the level of a person's experience when they go into the Mars gym, for example, if there's someone who is fairly savage, and they'll go into their Mars gym and they'll have experiences at that level of consciousness. Someone else who's very empathetic, who's learned passivity and empathy and compassion, they'll go into their Mars gym at their level and it will still go up. They'll still have experiences that stretch them, but they won't be necessarily in the savage zone unless they've forgotten what it's like to be savage, in which case they'll be an enlightened person who meets savagery. And suddenly there's their memory thing. Yes. So at some stage, of course, the soul then is able to kind of occupy. I sometimes think, like, imagine that someone's building you a car in your garage. So someone's building you a car in your garage and you're not allowed to see it until it's ready to drive. You're okay. All right, well, can have a glimmer. So when it's half built, they open the curtain a bit and you can see a bit of it. Right? But although it's growing, you know, it's being completed, you still can't get in it to function it, operate it yet. But then comes the day when you're given the keys and now you have individuality. You have autonomy. So when a child's born, as you know, when they cut the cord, a valve shoots across and air comes into the lungs. And the child starts to breathe oxygen through its airways. And at that point, all of the central nervous system is operating then. I looked into this a lot in my MSc and found that 70% of your brain's DNA is developed after you're born. There is a change. Right? In fact, there are a lot of changes that take place. So now people tend to think that the human gestation period is 18 months, 9 months in the womb, 9 months out. So how we become and how we enter life. Yes. Now, another thing to think of, someone was mentioning about, choosing the moment of birth. And think of it like souls come in seasons. So do you remember this? We looked at the orbit times of planets, right? So because Mercury and Venus are between the Earth and the Sun, they rotate in 1 year. The Earth takes a year to go around the Sun, what we call a year. Mars is further out from the Earth, so Mars takes 2 years to go around the Sun. So if the Sun goes through a sign of the zodiac once a month, then Mars, twice as far away from the Earth, takes 2 months roughly to go through a sign of the zodiac. So every 2 months, every child on Earth has got the same Mars sign. The house is different, the aspects to the Mars are different, but the sign is the same. Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the Sun, so it'll be in the same sign of the zodiac for roughly 1 year. So every child born on planet Earth has the same Jupiter sign. The house position is different, the aspects are different, so their experience of it is different in the context of their life. And that's a very important thing, the context, that social context, the economic context, the family context. All of those things play a role. So it's not just that everybody with a certain Jupiter sign will have the same belief system, but they'll have the same approach to their beliefs. So if, say, for example, there are 3 people that have got, I don't know, say Jupiter in Aries, right? They'll all have a fiery, protective relationship towards their beliefs. So one might be a humanist who refutes the idea of a God altogether. Another one might be an Islamic person, so they're on a jihadi, right? Another person might be a Catholic, and they're beating themselves up like really powerfully every day with a hair share and doing their penance things with a rosary breeze, right? They've all got Jupiter in Aries, but their approach to their religion is Aryan, but their religion itself is different. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're living out their chart in the context of their life.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment that you can go into the astral space outside of life. And just imagine that you're looking down onto the Earth, spinning slowly beneath you. And you're in a huge, big kind of aircraft hangar. And at the front of the aircraft hangar, there's a man with a clipboard, because some souls are about to beaming down on the sunbeams, down into planet Earth, right? And the man on the clipboard has certain characteristics ready for incarnation. So he calls to the people and he shouts, all the people who are quick-minded, fast-processing, very assertive, come to the front now. And they all come to the front. And he's with his watch, he's ready, and he says, now go. And they all beam down onto planet Earth. And they become born in Manhattan, Taiwan, and Glasgow, right? Now the world is infused with more children who have these assertive qualities, because there's a very special, significant thing taking place in this moment. The sun is at 0 degrees Aries, the beginning of the sign of Aries. And just per chance, by coincidence, the moon is at the beginning of the sign of Aries. Now, Aries is a fast processing sign, and it's a sign of expression and assertion, but also a depression as well, because we either express or we depress, right? But it's an action thing. And in this moment, the god and goddess are attuned. It's a new moon. The sun is at the beginning of Aries. And so now we have people who are fast in the way their general character, but also they react quickly. Moon in Aries. So we got fast people who react quickly. You tread on their toe accidentally. Oh, sorry. Like, yeah, hold on a minute. I only trod on your toe. Didn't mean that to happen. Oh, sorry, I can't help myself. Bash. They just react quickly. Wasp comes in the room, react quickly, right? They're on it fast. Now, the sun, as we know, from our perspective of observation, takes 1 month, 30 degrees, to go through the sign of Aries. But the moon whizzes around the earth in a complete cycle in that month. So the moon will only be in Aries for about 2.5 days. Right? So now just imagine we skip forward a couple of days and we find that now the moon is in Taurus, but the sun is still way back in the beginning part of Aries. Right? So now the man at the clipboard, at the front of the hangar, remember him, he says, now all the souls who are fast but react slowly. Oh, get your head around that. The people who are fast but react slowly. They come to the front and then they beam down. All the people with sun in Aries but moon in Taurus. They have a very slow beginning in life. Sleeping times flow into feeding times, which flow into sleeping times. They have food and sleep, and food and sleep, and food and sleep in a regular rhythm of life for the first 3 years of their life. And their unconscious learns that life is an easy, flowing, predictable, never, ever changing rhythm. And that's how they react and respond to the world all the time. But they grow into someone who's impatient. But imagine being that person. Can you imagine what that's like? Like, you're an adult and you want to get on with things, but you keep kind of making yourself late because your reactions are slower than your cognition.
I think I've got that in my sign.
Right. You see, yes. And then, of course, the moon moves on 2.5 days later. It goes into the sign of Gemini. And now the man with the clipboard says, right, all the souls who react quickly but have to talk all the time, talk incessantly, talk all the time, talk incessantly, talk all the time, talk incessantly, text, Twitter. Boom, they come down. So now you've got a load of people. Why do you keep posting about your dinner? Why do you keep posting? Yeah, I went in the shop and I looked at the door. Oh, look, there's the thing on the shelf. Click, picture, Facebook, photograph, And you think, why do some people do that? Well, they're like micro journalists. Why are these people like, I must post it now? You know, I actually saw a thing in my newsfeed years ago when I was first on Facebook, and someone said, I'm having sex right now. I mean, like just enjoy it, girl.
Time to post it.
You know, thank you for letting me know, lady. But you know, what I don't know what he was thinking. Assuming it was a he, right? Or a they, or a them, right? Lord knows. Anyway, but yes, you know, decorum, please. But you know, if you find that you know someone who's like a constant chattering journalist who has to give commentary on everything all the time, no matter what it is, there's a high chance that they've got moon in Gemini. And if they've got sun in Aries at the same time, they won't be able to wait. They have to tell you now. Otherwise, they get depressed. Yes. And so the moon moves through all the signs. So you can have a person with sun in Aries who's got moon in Taurus. But another person's got sun in Aries, they've got moon in Aries. Another person's got sun in Aries, but they've got moon in Capricorn. Another person's got sun in Aries, they've got moon in Aquarius or moon in Libra. So now suddenly you find that there are 12 different variations of Aries. And that's just with 2 planets. You see how complex this can be, right? The idea that someone's an Aries and they're the same as the other Aries people. What utter nonsense. But that's pop for you. Populisms like that. It's only when you get into debate over it that you find detail. And of course, once the moon has gone all the way around, we've actually had a solar month take place. So now the sun is in the beginning of Taurus. Right. So now the man with the clipboard says, right, all the slow, steady people who react quickly, they'll beam down onto planet Earth. right? So now you got these people who are kind of going along, and the fly comes, they do that. You know, I am a slow, steady person. I am reliable and dependable. Jump, leap, impetuosity. Right. Okay. I used to jump at things in the past, but I've learned to slow down. I've learned to take time. Oh, right. It wasn't like that when I was younger, you know. But then, you know, I got into a lot of batterings and things, hit my head on things a lot. So now I'm just more slow and steady now. Discovered gardening. Oh, that's nice. Now the man with the clipboard says, right, all the slow processing people who begin life processing slowly. Oh. And they arrive. The steady ones. The ones we can lean on. The ones who have the same hairstyle all the way through their life, like the last Queen of England. Queen Elizabeth, Sun in Taurus. Yeah. How many women do you know that have the same hairstyle decade after decade after decade?
Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah. Sorry?
No, I was joking. I said just Queen Elizabeth.
Indeed. Yeah. She was a brilliant Sun in Taurus. You know, I used to say to students, if you really want to kind of understand what it's like to be inside Taurus, watch footage of the Queen's coronation. There's this little Sun in Taurus girl, and she's kind of wheeled along to sit in this gold chair, this chair made of gold and diamonds, crusted diamonds, right? And they give her this big kind of round thing that's crusted in gold and diamonds, and then this stick thing that's got loads of gold and diamonds, and they put this hat on her head that's just covered in gold and diamonds, and they put this thing around her shoulders covered in gold and diamonds, and there's just this soul just sitting there that's being literally overlaid with all these things of high value, and then promises to maintain that position and to never waver. And that steadfastness is one of the things that cause so many people to queue up for hours, just to kind of tip a hat of honor and respect to someone who is steadfast in a chaotic, shaky world. You know, so slow processing people to fast processing people might seem done and boring, but fast processing people to slow people are just kind of missing everything. You know, it's all about perspective and relative positioning. And of course, after a while, the moon goes into Aquarius, into Gemini. So they have slow processing people who feel a need to tell you about it all the time. Made some more jam today. It was a nice batch today. I put some extra sugar in. That's nice. Yeah. And the cat came back. That's nice. Yeah. There's a value in that. There's merit in that. It's just a pathway. So through our lives and over time, we have to experience everything. That means you'll have a life when you're tall, unusually tall. You'll have a life when you're unusually short. You'll have a life when you have asthma and can't breathe. You'll have a life when you have a perfect athletic figure. You'll have a life when you're poor, or a life when you're impoverished. You'll have a life when you're wealthy. You'll have a life when you have power, and how do you dispense it? You'll have a life when you're on the receiving end of other people's power. You'll have lives that are short, just a minute or two. You'll have lives that are long. You'll have lives that in every possible scenario you can think of, in every gender dynamic that you can think of, round and round and round and round, as your heart becomes lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. At least that's the reincarnation theory in esoteric philosophy. How many of you kind of relate with that sort of sense of things?
Yeah,
Completely, David.
I do. And then
Say that again?
someone else spoke. I was saying I do.
Yes.
I find it fascinating, and I do believe in it, and I've had regression as well, which is good.
Cool.
But then I don't know, come from a spiritualist point of view, part of the spiritualist and national union, as a spiritualist, we're not supposed to really believe in reincarnation, are we, Joe?
Well, I think Well, I do believe in it. I do believe in reincarnation. I just don't believe it happens as often as like all the time. So yeah, so I think there's just
Well,
a bit of both.
not sure what you mean by all the time.
Well, I mean, I don't think we as reincarnators often as some people think we do.
I've never heard anybody put a time frame on it. You know,
I don't mean a time as in like I just mean as often, you know, we go back and we come straight back again, or we go back and we come straight back again. And
no, I don't think it's the case either. I think that, you see, as soon as you leave the physical realm, you leave the realm of time. Einstein showed that time is relative to space.
Yeah.
So it might be that from an Earth perspective, it could be 700 years between incarnations, or it could be 7 seconds. And I think that's really dependent upon whatever the soul's next lessons are. But as soon as you're out of the realm of space, you're out of the realm of time.
Yeah.
You know, so a soul could have 1,000 years of rest and recuperation between lifetimes, but in clock time, it's only 30 seconds, or the opposite of that. You know, and so you know, a soul can have like literally 1,000 Earth years between lifetime. I think it really depends on what the lessons are, and as far as I'm concerned, as an astrologer, whether or not they're waiting for the moment that the celestial spheres pattern is such that it correlates with the dynamics of the next incarnation. So it's like if you've got to learn about, say, heavy duty things to do with family and responsibilities and things, you'll have to wait until Saturn's going through Cancer, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think that the astrological pattern fits the life lessons, and that might not necessarily be instantly. So another thing for me is that souls aren't physical, and therefore there's no such thing as a young soul or an old soul. It can't exist. You can have maturity, but not time, because souls aren't physical, so you can't measure it with time. A soul can't be broken, it can't be fractured, because it isn't physical.
I believe the same.
It's a spiritual thing. And so someone said to me once, I've had 30,000 incarnations, and I thought, I thought, oh dear, poor man, really.
Yeah.
Because
I think the same. I'm not coming back here 30,000 times.
Yeah, some people say that as a boast. You see, oh, I've had 30,000 incarnations, right? But to me, that's the equivalent of saying this. Imagine there's a classroom of 5-year-olds, right? And the classroom of 5-year-olds have their first year in school. So a year later, they're all 6 years old. And all the 6 years olds go off to level 2, apart from one who requests to remain and do level 1 again. So some new children come, and there's a class of 5-year-olds with a 6-year-old. But a year later, there's a class of 6-year-olds with a 7-year-old. All the 6-year-olds go off to level 2, apart from one. That same student who asked to do level 1 again. Eventually, there's a 42-year-old man sitting in the corner of a class of 5-year-olds, right, boasting about how often he's done level 1. You see what I mean? I'm more impressed if someone does level 1 and they're in Oxford University next day, right? Because I'm impressed by learning, not repetition. So if someone's had 30,000 lifetimes, I just think, why are you so slow? You know, what is it you're not getting? What is it you're not comprehending? You know, sorry,
but I mean, we also have no idea, because of where we go. We could go to other galaxies. We could go and live on a planet somewhere else that we don't even know about. So,
yes,
we can't just think that
I've always said that to me, what our astrology looks at is this solar system, this school, this Earth, this school here. Right? This is a place where you can learn about greed and avarice and cruelty and sadism. I'm not suggesting that it's the only school. In that sense, I tend to think that for me, people like Buddha, Pythagoras, Lao Tse, Confucius, Muhammad, Buddha, Jesus, Osiris, for me, these are the prefects of this school. I'm an aspiring prefect. I'm not a prefect at this school. I'm nowhere near that, right? But to me, if they're the prefects of this world, then they're in the bottom class of the next one, that next school, whatever that like. I can't get my head around being that, the Pythagoras-y level, the Jesus-y level, let alone what the prefects of that one would be like. Right? But out of all the stars in the trillions of them in the universe, it would be very naive to think that there aren't planets that have life on them that orbit other stars. And for me, that suggests that in the physical universe, there's more than one school. You know, some of the things that people have experienced in past life regression seem rather peculiar and strange.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I can highly recommend the work of a young guy, Matthias De Stefano. He has a series on Gaia. It's also on Amazon Prime, I think. And it's 4 seasons. It's called Initiation, and it talks exactly about that. The unique thing about him, apparently, is that he, because of a unique upbringing that he had, he can remember all of his past lives. So he goes into all of the dimensions and the relevance of the zodiac, which is fascinating. And he said exactly the same that you did.
Oh, cool.
And he, on YouTube, he also goes into detail about how reincarnation works and where you go to the 4th to the 5th and when you come back and how you come back. So highly, highly recommend his stuff.
What's his name, Stephanie?
I think she said Matthias De Stefano.
You're on mute, Steph. You need to open your mic.
Put it in the chat box. That'd be the best.
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. All right. Now, I mean, I read a lot about this kind of stuff, life between lives and all this sort of when I was younger, you know. But doing past life regressions and having them done, because every time I do a workshop, of course, I get people to do me, you know. So I don't know all of my past lives, but I know a few of them. You know, I've been monastic a lot of the time. It's not a surprise to me that I've done this kind of thing before. Right? I'm just kind of picking up the baton, and hopefully there'll be another version of the continued exploration kind of going forwards. You know, but there are some kind of things that people say about past lives and things where I think people get some things a bit squiffy and a bit wrong, like the notion of, you know, an old soul or a young soul. I don't think that's a plausible way of kind of understanding what a soul is. Likewise, there was once an England football team manager who said something that was also repeated a few years later by an actor in a soap opera called Coronation Street. And they both said that people who are disabled because it's punishment for transgressions in a previous life, which is a horrific thing to say to people who are disabled. If someone's paraplegic or autistic like me, etc., to say that it's some kind of punishment. And my reason for saying that is this. Can anybody here remember their first ever driving lesson? Your first, when you sat on the wrong side of the car and you bashed the wrong elbow. Can anybody remember that? The first ever driving lesson. When you had to look down at the pedals because you didn't know where they were. And there were these dials and things, and you had to steer the car and try to avoid the man on the bicycle, right? And then at some point, because the muscle memory gets used to the car, you find at some stage that you can drive the car and change the radio and still avoid the man on the bike, and you're not even looking because your unconscious is doing it, right? So that process of finding that something brand new stands out. When we do anything brand new, it's hard. The first time is difficult, right? No matter what it is. So is it that a soul is having a hard time because A, they were a sadistic bastard in the past, or B, because they're just doing something new and that soul's never encountered it before and they're having a go? Are you sure it's one or the other? Without actually interviewing the person and discovering the reality of their world, right? There's another thing, and that is just imagine that in any particular life that you have to experience 1 kilogram of pain. In various contexts, you might be a parent, you might be a, an athlete, you might be a tennis player, you might be a musician, whatever it is you do, but there's 1 kilogram of pain in an area of life through every person's life. But someone says, can I do a fast track? Can I have 4 kilos of pain in one life? Just to kind of do some accelerated learning. So is it sometimes that a paraplegic child is an incredibly courageous soul who's experiencing what seems to be like a locked-in syndrome in a world that can't communicate with them, can't read them, can't understand them, and they're trying to interact with the world, but they're wrapped in pain, not being able to communicate, but their mind is really bright. Their soul understands what's going on. The soul knows what's going on, but the body doesn't. Yeah.
David,
no, sorry?
Sorry, David. I'd be interested to know how you would describe the difference between spirit and soul.
Oh, well, for me, like I said, soul, it comes from the Greek word psyche. So for me, a soul is a personality. And spirit is the great light of all things.
That's exactly how we describe it as well, David.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like saying, to give you a parallel, it's like the difference between weather and season. Does that help?
Yeah, no, I just was interested to hear your take on it.
Yeah. Now, there's another thing that happens, of course. According to Blavatsky, with the Secret Doctrine, and her theosophy that she came up with in the middle of the 19th century. And she, like I said last time, that she took Darwin's idea of evolution and applied it to the notion of Hinduistic reincarnation and ended up with this notion of the evolution of soul. And that is one would presume that we learn over time. And so some people think that karma is a tit for tat thing. It's, an eye for an eye. It's if you hurt someone, you get exactly the same thing back, but maybe not. Just imagine that in centuries past, there are two souls. One's male, one's female. And the male one rapes the female. Many centuries later, they incarnate at around the same time. They're roughly the same age. And they've incarnated in the same geographical space, London, England. And they both enjoy the company of dogs. And they're in their 30s, and they've never met. And they happen to live in an area of London around a place of green called Hyde Park. Right? And they take their dogs out for a walk in Hyde Park on a regular basis, never met, never connected. And in one of those kind of evenings where the lights begin to kind of come on, the street lights come on earlier, and we're closing the curtains a bit early, it's the beginning of winter. And there's always a sort of an autumnal mist around this kind of period of time, that they both decide to take their dogs for a walk late one evening. It's about, say, 10 o'clock at night. And for some reason, they both decide to take a different route through the park. They're not really sure why, they're just following their feet. But their feet is obviously being guided by the soul, because they're going to have a meeting. And it will be the first time these two souls have met since the rape took place. For a reason he doesn't quite understand, the man begins thinking about sex. The woman feels like she's having one of those days where things happen around you, but you're not really there, you're not really part of it. Like she's in a sort of a semi-haze, as it were. And they take a different route through the park, and they're getting closer and closer and closer to one another physically. The souls know that one way for the rapist to learn what it's like to be raped and therefore gain compassion is to be raped themselves. But the soul that was raped in the intermediary years has learned things like tolerance and forgiveness and compassion, and chooses to just walk past. And in that moment of just walking past, the soul that was a rapist learns just as much from the moment of forgiveness as it would do from having the experience done to them. So as souls become lighter, more enlightened, wiser, it is possible that we can teach those who are not yet out of the slough of the savagery what it's like to be kind, tolerant, forgiving, by being kind, tolerant, forgiving ourselves. Because that's how younger ones learn, right? You know, a philosopher said to me, the only thing I'm annoyed about is that I have to kind of rub shoulders with the savage, you know, because they hurt me, you know, in their savagery. I said, yeah, but how else can they learn? They need something to model. They need to be shown the way. And if you have anything within you that's tolerant or caring or compassionate or kind, then that means by definition, you're one of the way showers, if you like, just by being alive. You know, when there's someone in a doorway and you give them 50p, the multitude of things that soul learns from you in that moment, and the things you learn about yourself in that moment too. So that's one of the reasons why I send that Einstein quote out with all the emails, because I'm hoping it will spread. You know, we can make a difference by just making little differences in yourself. You know, we're part of a wave in a way. Yes, Steph?
Is there like an overall assignment sheet? Like you were just touching on consciousness, compassion, understanding, or is it just super individual for everyone? Or is there some general higher things that we're all meant to gravitate towards according to the astrology?
Well, that really depends on whether or not you think it's the case that every single human being on planet Earth experiences exactly the same thing at exactly the same time in exactly the same way. Ever.
Of course not.
Well then, there's your answer.
No, but like I guess I formulated the question wrong. Is there like, are we all learning things to get closer to compassion, kindness, or is that just rubbish?
I think that's the ultimate purpose, but there's a difference between orientation and direction.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, you're on the south coast of England and your desire is to get to Scotland. So that means you've got to head north, right? But you're going to do it in a zigzag. So from, say, Bournemouth, you go up towards Essex. And then from Essex, when you go to Essex, you're traveling east, northeast. But then you turn and you travel northwest towards Birmingham. And then you change and you travel northeast towards Nottingham. Now, if you had a compass in your hand, your compass would say, I'm traveling east. Your compass would say, I'm traveling west. But your orientation is north.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sometimes I think it's possible that on a path to enlightenment, you experience everything. And that means being cruel, being misogynistic, being a rapist, being a murderer, etc. Being a victim of such things and being a perpetrator of such things. Round and round and round and round. In as many contexts as you can imagine.
Well, there are many models that actually believe that light and dark are just two sides of the same coin in any case, aren't there?
I guess so, in a sense. But,
you know,
but kindness and forgiveness seems to have a particular kind of dynamic of their own, you know. And we can learn about forgiveness by somebody not forgiving us. We can learn about generosity by being someone being selfish around us. You know, we can learn about the value of food by starvation or famine. You know, you can learn about how beautiful the world is by having a life being blind, or having no sight, having sight and then losing it. And then, you know, the value of sight is discovered because you had a life where you became blind when you were 20 or something, you know. And in that moment, you kind of realized how beautiful blue is and green. So the next time you have an incarnation, you're full of vivid imagery, and you become an artist because you love displaying and expressing your love for color so much, possibly because you lost it once. You know? So
I just often wonder, like a lot of people talk about, we have to raise the consciousness, or that's the only way we're going to get anywhere, to raise the consciousness. Well, or is that the point, or is the point just experience and evolution? I don't know.
Okay, well, like I said, I don't know what the grand plan is. I'm not privy to that. All I can kind of say is, if this Earth is a school for souls, it's a place where you can learn certain things. And to me, it seems that this is the infant school, if you like. And there's a college and there's a university and beyond, right? So if this Earth was changed, it wouldn't be the infant school anymore. So where would souls go to learn savagery if it wasn't available? So what I think happens partly is a bit like a meerkat beginning to sniff something on the wind. I think when a soul matures and it starts to become more aware that there is a lighter way of being, a more enlightened way of being, or even aware that there are prefects like the great lights, and that there might be another place to go and learn that is beyond this realm, it's kind of like it senses it and it sniffs it and it wants to go there. And the first thing is like, well, if you had perfection of memory and you could remember your soul state while you're conscious, and you could see through the eyes of perfection and clarity, you would see angels running around with machine guns, because that's the reality in a sense, right? And it would be so crushing, you wouldn't be able to kind of cope with it. So I think that as souls become more illumined, if you like, the first thing they want to do is make this world better. I've been doing this, I've been saying these things for 32 years because I want this realm to be better than it is. But I'm not of the opinion that it can be literally turned into a heaven on earth, because it has a place. There is a purpose or function, the purpose of which I don't know, but I can certainly understand its function as far as a karmic school for souls is concerned.
Yeah, experience and evolution, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that to an extent, as individuals become more wise and enlightened in their own behaviors, their own attitudes, that becomes something that can be observed and learned by those who are not yet there. And I think that you could almost divide the population of Earth into three parts. There are those who are kind of very enlightened and are seeking, wisdom. There are those who but they're not there. It's not their time this time around. They're just a humdrum, or they're not a thinker, And you could talk wisdom and enlightenment and common sense until you're blue in the face, and it just won't go in. It's not their thing this time around. And there are other people kind of hovering between the two. And those are the ones that you can kind of bring up, if you like, or kind of teach or elevate. The elevated ones, you don't need to. You kind of preach into the converted. There's no point. Do you know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's just how I kind of see things, really. I'm not saying in any way that how I see things is the truth at all. It's a truth amongst one of 8 billion truths. And that's
I was just wondering if the astrology gave us any clues to the bigger plan.
What do you mean by the bigger plan?
That whole thing, if the third dimension, as in the one we're in right now, is about learning.
You're in a fourth dimension. You keep forgetting about time.
No, well, it depends. There's different people that talk about it in different ways.
I know they do, but height, breadth, width, and time is where you are.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this whole thing about that Earth is this place of experience and evolution. I was wondering if the astrology had any wisdom of what the greater point of it all was.
Oh, well, that means God's plan, if you like. And I don't know, because all the astrology is of this little bit of universe here.
Yeah. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. so we can understand this little bit of universe here where we are through astrology, because that's what astrology looks at. Now, there might be some dynamics within that that reach outside of that. And you'll have to wait and find out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I wonder what's coming up. Yes. Well, one thing we know that's coming up is next week we're going to focus on psychological dynamics. Some of you might be trained psychologists. I don't know. Some of you might be lay people who read about psychology. I don't know. Some of you might have never looked at a psychology book in your life. I have no idea. But what I do know is that further up, when we look at some of the houses, especially the 4th, the 8th, the 12th, that illustrate things of the unconscious, it's much easier for us all to understand the terminology that's being discussed if we have a chat about terminologies first. So next time I'm going to do some sort of basic psychology models, right? Just so that we're all kind of informed from the same page, as it were. So when we go forwards, there are things that are easier to kind of understand and digest because we've all either learnt something new or had a reminder of some kind. Okay. All right. How have you found part 4 of this introduction?
Really good, really enjoyable.
Very
Really
enjoyable.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And knowledgeable as well.
Excellent. I'm really pleased.
Really good.
Yes, really good.
Wonderful. Yeah. So next time you look at the moon and it's a crescent shape or nearly full, you know exactly why. Because of the relationship of the dance between the Earth, the moon, and the sun. Fantastic. Right. Take very good care, my friends. I shall see you very soon. And we'll continue on our fantastic voyage. All right. Take
Thank
care.
you, David.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this fascinating window into the nature of being human through this fine and ancient art of astrology. It is truly a pleasure to share these astro adventures with you, and please ensure you like and subscribe and continue exploring. Auto Q05, take 4. Thank you for watching this fascinating window into the nature of being human through this fine and ancient art of astrology. It's truly a pleasure to share these astro adventures with you, and please ensure you like and subscribe and continue exploring the deepening wisdom and illumination that resides within the art of Rowan astrology. Until next time, I wish you peace and good health, and please take very good care of you. Bye-bye.